And then the guy from or something like they're talking. He was like, you mentioned yeah, it's really fun. I haven't seen her in a long time. Yeah, it was in somewhere yesterday. I know, it's just a string of them. Well, and I'm sure that, you know, if anyone can really understand it, I'm sure he says something that's lucky, but.
What is the order
Did you
in?
ever
Do we,
read in IETF when they were,
is it going to be who's first? I mean, either who's, let's see,
Administrator goes first.
and then John.
Then John
Okay.
execute.
Yep. I just need to stick the O3 in front of this one just so that I need to just remove it out of this one. This is just a temporary thing. And then is it L and M? LWM?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the last one is the on-demand extension.
Good. Yeah, because then preview will just.
Somebody said that. It was at the end of it. Because they were. I think that was it. I know, they're hilarious. Yeah.
All right, we should begin. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the DHC Working Group. I will remind people about the note well. You've seen it many times probably, and don't need to read it. Hopefully, you know it. The blue sheets are going around. We do need some Jabber or Ethernet note takers, so if anybody is willing to assist in doing that, that would be awesome. You know, put some notes out on Etherpad, and we'll use those as to produce the minutes. Anybody willing to do that? All right. Well, anybody willing to do Jabber scribing? All right.
Oh well, so I can help with both, but I will be distracted with running the meeting. So
yeah. All right. Thanks. And just so everybody knows, I'm Bernie Volz, one of the co-chairs, and
I'm Tomek Migalski. Hello.
And we do not have a working group secretary, but if anybody is interested, let us know. Okay, the agenda is as follows. We'll take a few minutes to do some administrivia, agenda bashing, things like that. Then we'll have John Brzezowski present on some DHCP deployment stuff at Comcast. We have a discussion on secure DHCP v6 as there were some issues raised recently on that document and some concerns. And so the question is, what do we do about it? Do we need to make some significant changes? Do we drop the work or whatever? And then we have two presentations on some individual submissions on some new options for DHCP v6 and in some cases DHCP v4 as well. Just a quick update on the working group document status, there were 2 RFCs published, the failover protocol for V6 and the prefix length hint issues. 1 RFC is in the editor queue, and we have 6 working group drafts that are currently active. Details can be found for those on the data tracker. So a quick update on 3315 biz. We did have a working group last call last summer, which generated about 270 issues. We did publish a new version in March of 2017, which addressed most but not all of the issues. And then we published one in May, which addressed the remaining issues. And we initiated another working group last call on that document, and received reviews with about 30 mostly minor issues. There was a few that were a little bit more significant, but most of them were fairly minor edits to the document. We did publish an 09, which addressed all of those issues. And Ralph sent an email out, because he's the consensus caller on the document, that he believes the working group has reached consensus on the document. There will likely be a -10 before we do send it on. One will depend on what happens with the secure DHCP V6 work, because currently the 3315 biz does reference that, and if we determine we're not going to make much progress on that document, maybe it's not appropriate to reference it. Another is that I had meant to update Appendix A to include some clarification regarding the lifetimes. That was an issue raised by Jinmei that we addressed in the 09 document, but I forgot to mention it in the updates, the changes that we did. And hopefully we'll get a few reviewers to review the changes we made for the 09 and confirm that they're okay, or provide us a few additional edits that we will make. So please do review the 09. And again, the goal is to publish the -10 in early August and send that on to Suresh, our AD, and the IESG eventually. And we'd like to thank Ralph for being the document shepherd and doing the working group consensus determination work. Any questions about any of that? And I didn't really stop to ask if there's any issues with the agenda that we wanted to rearrange things, but I assume somebody would have stopped if they had, would have stopped me if they had some concerns. Okay, so John, you're up. And you know to stay in the pink box and all that fun stuff.
Okay. So, John Brzezowski. So after the last, during the last IETF, I saw, Tomek in the hall, and I was telling him about some of the things that we've been up to. And I think they thought it would be valuable if I told you guys a little bit about the current state of DHCP6 at Comcast. Next slide, Bernie.
Yeah, so the slides didn't line up when I converted them.
It's because I only did them like 45 minutes ago. So, as Ralph knows, Bernie as well, over a decade ago, the three of us, and probably a handful of other people had spent a lot of time specifying how V6 was intended to operate within all the cable labs technologies, DOCSIS, eRouter, packet cable, etc. DHCP has been a critical part of DOCSIS networks since the beginning of its time. That didn't change with V4. And I think, we don't have, we may not have some love for DHCP in the room, right? But I think the byproduct of its availability is unquestionable, right? It's basically enabled companies like Comcast to take IPv6 connectivity to tens of millions of customers, right? So that's material. So we did that work in 2005, spent a lot of time over the past 10, 12 years writing things like DHCP servers, CMTSs, network, etc. And next slide. And we'll talk a little bit about where that stands today. So today in our network, 99% of about 44 million cable modems use DHCP-v6, and they are v6 only. 90% and growing of our e-routers are dual stack provisioned, so they both get an IANA and an IPD. And 99% of, and that's probably about 20 million, 21 million. And for set-top boxes, which is our video platform, 99% are v6 only, no v4. And that's probably north of, 16 some million, right? Next slide. Many of the cable modems use embedded, their own kind of embedded homegrown DHCP-v6 clients. So like, you'll get these from things like, Broadcom or Intel. Some of them use open source implementations. One of the ones that I had kind of direct influence over was the DHCP client, v6 client that we used for our set-top boxes. Our set-top boxes, if I can go back, no need to move the slides, but I'll point back to that. They both get an IANA and an IPD. So our set-top box is more like a video gateway, right? So it's a host and a router. So we treat it a lot like an e-router, right? And our set-top box happens to use the Dibbler implementation, probably slightly aged version, which I'm sure I'll get some criticisms for here momentarily. But we happen to know somebody in the room that knows something about Dibbler, I think. Next slide, please. Huh? Yeah. So some observations. It has been extremely stable. Probably, honestly, this wasn't an arbitrary decision. We took a look at a lot of the other implementations and landed on this one because of its stability and ease of use. It came with a lot of things that worked just out of the box. One of the things that we're working on right now is shrinking the binary size. So it's a rather large binary size, unfortunately, that I'm getting yelled at work to kind of help rectify. Maybe I can get some advice, perhaps, at some point. But it was actually quite easy for us to kind of work up the configurations to kind of make these things very DOCSIS-ish or cable-like. So there are options that must be transmitted as part of the DHCP-v6 transaction that allow for us to provision these devices. One of the things that we did notice, and we tried, I think we tried and refrained from hacking Dibbler, is when Dibbler does a proper shutdown, it sends a release. That was actually causing some issues for us on the provisioning side of things. So one of the things we talked about was modifying the implementation control scripts to just simply kill 9 the process, which would prevent the release from being sent. But that was we didn't want to do that because it was not friendly. So one of the things that we're looking at doing, so I'll kind of pause there to see if anybody has any questions or comments. We'll talk a little bit about futures, and then I'll get out of your hair. But I just wanted to give it a minute to see if you guys had anything questions or if the working group had any other comments or questions. So one of the things that we're looking at now with DHCP-v6 is really trying to optimize. If you think about the math that I just told you, right? We're probably approaching 100 million bindings in our DHCP platform, and this server platform. And there happens to be somebody here, multiple people in the room here who know about that. So now every day is a first at Comcast, and what I mean by that is every day is a first new record, right, of number of v6 devices on our network, right? This we reached this first last June, and then every day from this point forward is basically a brand new another kind of new day. So what we're finding is that with the increase in these number of devices and the number of transactions, right, because every DHCP client performs a release at some interval, a renew at some interval. Many of the devices actually do it every day, right? So where we are now is we're looking to really, with the growth that v6 has really enabled us to pursue, it's unencumbered us from that point of view, right? We've been able to add many more devices because of v6. As a result, the scale is now almost doubled over the past 10 years. So now we're looking at opportunities to kind of really optimize DHCP v6. And one of those optimizations is perhaps going down the path of stateless DHCP-v6. Haven't done anything more than just some unit testing, and frankly, there are some people back at the office that deserve all the credit, not me. We just offered the idea up, and then some other folks who I trust quite a bit at work went off and did a lot of that work. But those are some of the things that we're looking at. Some of the other things that we talked about as part of the unique prefix per host is looking at doing prefix delegation over Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, that does not involve either Dibbler or our use of CNR today. The DSP server is embedded within the wireless aggregation device, but it still should be of interest to you guys as well, right? So with that, I think that's my last slide. Anything that you want me to touch on before we take questions or comments?
So right now with the client, the Dibbler client, you're doing both the address assignment and prefix delegation for the
Yep.
box.
Yep.
Cool.
It's a nice implementation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to keep maintaining this project until you give me an alternative to replace it with.
Okay.
I get from Dibbler, I keep getting, sorry, buddy, support for IPv6 prefix delegation not enabled. I think that one's not his fault. I think it's yours.
Where?
On your home routers.
That one. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good one though. I appreciate you bringing up that point. We had some bugs to fix. We are in the process of implementing sub prefix delegation. I don't know if that's really ever been a topic that you guys really needed to or wanted to get involved with. It was a little bit of a knife fight in kind of the combination of V6 ops and in particular HomeNet, but it's going to happen. I do have a large population of gateways today that do this. We just haven't gotten around to getting it across the entire population of devices.
So in Tim Winters, UNHIOL. So in that case, you have some algorithm for how you guys are going to carve up the sub PDs.
Yes.
Are you going to document that?
It already is. I think we wrote it down in some either a internet draft here or a Cable Labs document. I think we did
Okay.
somewhere. I had to dig it up, but we talked about it. There was like you can do.
I
you can go
vaguely
deep-
remember this.
You can go deep and wide. It's either a bunch of like at that point, it's just a full disclosure. We would in a situation like that, the home router would get a 56, absolutely, right?
Yep.
And then we would either do like 58s or 60s.
Okay.
Honestly, this stage of the game, we have enough experience with it to know that this whole idea that people are going to want like 254 64s in their house, we just don't see
No?
we don't see it happening. Yeah.
Okay.
So we think something on the higher end, maybe 58s or 60 should be sufficient. But Tim, we still see issues where gateways will take their delegated prefix that's shorter than a 64,
I know.
and they'll put it in the PIO. It
Yeah.
still blows my mind. I mean,
Yeah, it happens.
It's awful.
It's bad. We get them all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
The other question was, do you do any stateless or is all your stuff stateful? You always use DHCP and all these deployments, the stateful version. You're never giving out options.
In the home,
Yeah.
there should be stateless DHCP6.
Okay.
In the access network, always stateful.
Always stateful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the way DHCP was born in cable, and that's it's the shortest distance between 2 points. There was for us to just kind of keep going with the same thing. Yep. Any other questions, comments?
Oh, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
Thanks so much.
Actually, I do. Do you have stats on how many hosts use their DHCP6 stateful assigned address? I mean, you do support stateful internally in the home network, or you don't?
I don't want to say universally, right? Because we have a mix of implementations. Slack is everywhere. RDSS is everywhere, right? We have some gateways that do anything that does stateless, does stateful, but there are some gateways that don't have DHCP
Servers
at all, right? If my memory serves me correctly. And I think you're asking me what's the, are you asking me like how many leases are being granted in the?
The point that I realized recently is that depending on the size of the pool that these things have, they can end up being like privacy issues because they don't change. If you have a host that prefers DHCP6 assigned address, I don't know what typical hosts do, then it becomes very important how big the size of the pool that the gateway has and how often it changes the address.
Yeah, you're not going to like the answer that I'm about to offer you there. So basically one of the things I know that we did is we went from the last, so 000 to FFFF is the pool, right?
So 65,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan. So I'd rather almost just turn it off, right?
That's kind of dangerous. Yeah, I mean, it's not good for privacy because it's like trivial to scan that number of addresses.
Yep.
But what, John, this is Bernie, what devices are you talking about here? Is this
The home gateway.
The home gateway.
That's what he's
so-
talking about. Yeah.
Like if I'm sitting at Wi-Fi at home, right? So in V4 I
Right.
have a NAT, so nobody can.
But it
find
depends
me.
on what the gateway vendor does, because you don't usually supply the
No,
home
but they
gateway.
built that off of a document that I wrote 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was this document
All right.
predates 62 or whatever it was, and all this
Okay.
other crap like that because we couldn't make up our mind what we wanted to do here. So we had to go. We had a business
Okay.
plan, so we had to like chop, move along, right? So we kind of just moved on without.
But it's also the it's also the case that its rotation is important too. Even if you did rotate it, all right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not the way TCP works, dude, right? That gateway will continue to renew that address for as long as the upper 64 will change. Now, the lower 64 could change, but my guess is most clients, they'll put their old address in, it'll be a hint to the server, and then it'll help to seed whatever the new allocation is. So,
So then we need to make sure that implementations are preferring other addresses.
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, that's something that you mentioned in passing here this
Well,
week.
no, but we do is it's a privacy problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Most implementations.
They prefer the HTTP6 assigned address.
Yeah, it has to
I
do
think
with
so.
the default address selection. So they do algorithms. It's kind of out of the box. You don't quite know what you're going to get. It does vary a little bit, but yeah, it depends on the address scheme. Some of them will choose the privacy address over the 4191 address. But if they're not doing that, then it's a crapshoot.
I've actually seen DHCP be preferred, and I don't know. I can't offer you a number, right? But my memory tells me like it's preferred the vast majority of the time.
Yeah, because it's a regression compared to V4, right? That's the thing I'm getting at here. In V4, you have the NAT, right? And so your address is anonymized. But in V6, somebody can just like track you using the last few bits.
Understood. I'd like to have that conversation with you, Lorenzo, and if you're looking to have some collaboration there, I'm open to that. I like the idea of kind of specifying the pitfalls of having a very narrow base for address allocations. On the flip side, I have concerns, right? So like one of the things that we're noticing, and it's not that different with Slack and privacy. I want to make sure that we don't explode the impact on the neighbor tables, right? Like this is a serious concern that I have. I've seen this blow up some of my gateways already, right? Ralph?
Hi, Ralph Drums, still living the dream.
Yeah, man.
The question was about temporary versus permanent addresses. Do you have any idea whether clients ask for temporary, permanent? I mean, that was our intention when we originally came up with that division, but I have no idea whether any clients actually make that distinction and use them as they were intended. That is the permanent address for incoming and temporaries for outgoing.
I've even lost that in the shuffle, dude. Honestly, like so when
Yeah,
I
I
go
have-
barreling down the path of trying to get V6 done or something.
Oh yeah.
I go right to NA and no
Who knows?
no temporaries. I mean, it doesn't ring a bell. So as a result, I'll say I don't think there is heavy requesting and or allocation of addresses in that regard. Right?
Okay.
Anyone else? Super. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, John. Okay. I don't know what, it went up to the other menu. Let's see, I want this one here.
That's another one.
Oh. That kind of, maybe that's why it's screwing up.
You've got all of them selected.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I did. All right, here we go. Things acting funny, okay.
Okay, so this presentation is about the
You should send in the pink box probably. Okay. Here, you can use that for nothing. Give John.
Hello. Hello, I'm Tomek Podgórski. So I'd like to present what's been happening with the security HCP recently. I am not a co-author. I just try to move this work forward and been mostly unsuccessful with this. So a bit of history. So this draft or its predecessors were around for quite a long time. We went through last call in March. There were several reviews. In general, they were favorable. They said that the draft has improved in terms of clarity and completeness. In quality was good. However, the major issue raised was that there are no existing implementations. So, and this draft is quite complex. So people are uncomfortable with moving this draft forward. And then after a while, primary author Lishan Lee, she disappeared and stopped responding for mails for a couple months. Fortunately, she got back like 2 days ago, but she missed a lot in the process. So we hope that the issue could be addressed with having a hackathon in Prague. However, shortly after the hackathon was announced, we discovered that there's a problem that the algorithm used to sign the packets has the problem with the limitation. So it was too small for some of the DHCP packets. So, and after that, a long discussion ensued, and people stepped back and tried to ask the basic questions. So, what are the problems we're trying to solve? And these are some of the ideas that were mentioned. So, as you can see, this is a very broad spectrum of things that people could consider in general when you think about security and DHCP. So, lots of issues. Lots of technologies trying to solve different problems. So we thought that, okay, so this is not exactly going, towards completion. So we stepped back and talked about what are the problems that we are trying to solve. So we had a meeting on Sunday. So all the authors and people who were involved that commented, they were invited. Only 4 people showed up. We went through different use cases, and sadly the conclusion was that it's probably dead in its current form. And after that, we also had the chance to talk with Kathleen, who is a security ID, and she suggested that we could consider different options. One of them would be to publish this as experimental. Another one would be to trim it down to cover just the opportunistic encryption as a way to mitigating pervasive monitoring attack. So during the discussion, we tried to define what are the use cases that this draft could address. So the first one is the corporate network. So you have devices that are trying to connect to the corporate network, but then exactly no people jumping up and down waiting for this, waiting to develop the solutions and deploy it in corporate networks. And we strongly believe that the reason is that you can protect the first hop with 802.1x when we're talking about the communication between the client and the relay. And between the relay and the server can be protected with IPsec. There are also other technologies that can help with this environment. For example, the DHCP-v6 shield. So another use case that was frequently mentioned is the coffee shop. So you have your device, you come to a coffee shop, you don't exactly know them, but you would like to use the internet. So the TOFU, trust on first use model, it was mentioned, suggested, but when you at first glance it sounds good, but if you take a closer look, it really doesn't help that much. So it helps a bit with pervasive monitoring in the sense that that you could encrypt the traffic, but actually you don't know who you are connecting to. So whether you are connecting to the right server or maybe rogue server. And also the argument that, okay, so it helps with pervasive monitoring, but if the server is participating in the monitoring, you are out of luck anyway. So people came up with some ideas that, okay, maybe you could put some stickers, like you go to coffee shop, then you scan the QR code, and then based off that, you can confirm whether this is the right or bogus server. But this is very easy to circumvent. Someone can go in and stick a new sticker on top of it. So it doesn't help a lot. So in the last use case that we have is an insider attack in corporate network. So this is something that Fred is very interested in. So the idea is that, okay, you are using 802.1x, so you are authenticated to use the network, but then you can impersonate someone else, like to elevate your privileges or cover your tracks. And also in the discussions, one of the slightly uncommon use case was mentioned that if this would ever be deployed in a military, this could be used when someone steals the device and gets access to the network. It can broaden the impact of the attack. So these are the use cases that we considered. So, okay, given all that, I think I covered all the aspects of the discussions that we recently had. So now I'd like to consider what are the next steps. So first, we could fix the problem with signing with the encryption size limitation. There are some known techniques for that. And then we could publish this as experimental. So this is one option. Another option is to scope down this work to cover just the opportunistic encryption. This requires some work, but still it could be done. The third possibility is to work on a problem statement first. So basically step back and agree on what are the problems that we need to solve, and then deliver a solution that's solving only those problems. And final option is to drop the work. So I'd like to ask you, what are your opinions? What are your preferences?
And also if there's a general discussion on any of the, things that Tomek presented earlier, or people have follow-up questions around some of the things that we talked about, we'd love to hear those. So,
Tim Winters, UNHIOL. I vote opportunistic encryption on this one. I also be okay if we want to go back and look at the problem statement. I think, I think we're going to have problems if we don't work on this problem, and that people are going to look at 3315 biz and wonder where the security stuff, and we can at least tell them we're working on it. I think one of those two works. I think dropping the work and just walking away probably isn't going to work.
Yeah, there's another aspect that, that we are about to send 3315Bs to ISG. And well, they might be, a bit hesitant to approve it if there are no security-oriented solutions.
Yeah, so that my preference would be one of those two.
Okay. Fred?
Fred Templin, Boeing. So what I need is really a very simple thing. I need a way for the client to authenticate itself to the server. So I don't need to have all the encryption and all the, the other stuff that would come with this. So how would that work? Would I have to write my own little thing, or would it be an extension of 3315 to do just a client authentication?
So it depends. There are a couple options. The 3315Bs still has the authentication option.
Okay.
And there's a registry of algorithms. So you could write a very simple draft that you ask for a new assignment of a new value in that, and then define your algorithm for doing that. Or alternatively, you could use the parts from the existing draft. But I think going with using the authentication option would be simpler.
Okay. Okay, that makes great sense. Thank you.
Okay. Francis?
So, Francis Dupont, I say if we have some resource to do new work, we should go directly to the problem statement, because from the beginning, one of the problems of the secured HCP is exaf was to have no problem statement. So we have kind of solution. I was very loose about this part, and I believe it's one of the source of the final situation where we are. So if you have the resource, put it in a problem statement.
Okay.
I guess this is Bernie Volz. I guess one issue with doing the problem statement stuff is do we think we can get to agreement on what we actually would want in an end solution? I'm not saying that.
It's a problem with English. It's not problem statement. You have in French you put a S to problem because it's not only one problem to solve.
Okay, yeah, Benny, but if we cannot agree what's the problem we're trying to solve, we'll just fail if we
Right.
jump into the solution because it.
Right, I understand.
So it's.
It's more. No, it was more about the fourth option, which is drop the work, which is obviously we can all agree that we know what that means, right? The problem statement might end up that we don't know, or I look at it more as a requirement statement. What do we require than a problem statement? Because I think it should be sort of a combination of the two to say what are the problems that we're trying to solve, and therefore what are the requirements. And the question is, do we think we can get to an understanding of what those are? Because different people may want different things. So.
Okay, so it seems that we can easily cross out the first one. Nobody is really favoring this. With the opportunistic encryption, I don't hear anyone really interested in that either. So
well, Tim was interested in it, and I think.
Sorry, yeah.
And we certainly know that one of the security ADs, Kathleen, is interested in it.
Yes, but she said that it's better than dropping the whole work. So it's
it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Is what she's saying.
Okay, so in that case, we have three options. So, Bernie, are we going to do ham or?
Well, I guess there's also a question about we haven't had that much discussion, and we'll have to take anything that we do, of course, to the mailing list to sort of confirm, but I guess if there is a consensus in the room, that would be useful. And so I guess we should go through the four options and ask how many people are in favor, either in terms of a hum or a hand raising.
Okay.
And the other question that do we want to ask people just to limit themselves to one of the four, or are you allowed to vote for more than one? Yeah. Yep.
Can I answer a question that I missed?
Well, or do you want to make a statement? Yeah, you're right on time.
Good. Luckily for once. Kathleen Moriarty, SecAD. So I'd be really good with you just doing the opportunist encryption because I think that's kind of easy-ish. And I bet I can get some IPsec people to help. I know you don't want to do it right at the IPsec at the same layer, but using similar principles, I bet we could get some people to help.
Yeah.
And it would solve the airport use case. Like I don't use wireless in an airport. We also have IEEE doing things like standardizing the function to randomly assign MAC addresses, right? They're going to that kind of trouble. And we can't even do this very basic level of encryption at the very next step, right? So if you think about like the fruit they're picking off, we're not picking off the fruit that we can be.
I can add, we have already privacy on the DHCP. So we have already something which had useful things for attacker from DHCP. Can just use a fake or one-time identification, things like that.
Right.
Kathleen, I'm not sure if you are familiar with RFC 7844. The idea is that the client. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, the idea is that the client doesn't send any kind of identification that is useful or stable.
Yeah.
It just changes it. So yes, you can scoop it with privacy monitoring, but it's useful. It's useless to.
So
to do anything.
The coffee shop case, the only things which is revealed is the MAC address, and it's out of scope of the HCP to hide the MAC address. But there's a specific solution for this. But it's the only things you have to reveal.
So Kathleen Moriarty, SecAD again, 2 comments on that. So encryption would help to make it be an active attack, to be able to look at whether or not that function is in use. And then my other question is, how often is that ability understood and used by deployers of airports networks and coffee shop networks?
Well, it would be the clients that would be the ones that have an anonymity profile. And so it's up to the client implementers to implement that. And, just like the MAC
Okay,
address
and
randomization.
Any server would work with that?
Yes. I mean,
It
it
wouldn't have to have some level of compatibility built in?
no, there's nothing that the server would have to do. Obviously, there is, if the client changes its addresses very frequently, its MAC addresses very frequently, and also therefore changes its client identifier that it presents to the DHCP server, it would have to change its address, because if the lease is still active. So the idea would be that you go into one airport, you might get MAC address A and client identifier A, and then you go to a different airport and you would connect differently. You would have a different MAC address and a different client identifier.
Okay, so I guess I still would like to see opportunistic encryption as a possibility, as just the lowest possible thing you can do to ensure that it's just active attacks that would even get at this level. You've done 7 years of work on this, and to throw away the idea completely, just.
Yeah, I mean,
Stephen and I have been reading drafts, and I don't think any have come through yet where Ecker's read them, but for the last few years, and it's been a comment on every single one that we'd like to see some encryption.
Yeah, one of the problems with such long-lived drafts is that the original authors basically left. There's a new team working on it, and the goals has changed in the process. So
is it just that you need new authors?
yeah,
I think
Okay.
we have some people that are.
we have some, but it's so. How many active authors we have? Like maybe 2.
I think there's probably like 3 people that I think are interested.
Ted and Lishan.
Jen and Timothy, Carlin.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, do you want more help?
I think we want more help, but what we really want help on is, not the encryption protocols or the cryptographic algorithms, because we're just going to take things off the shelf, but technical guidance on exactly how the bits should go over the wire and how the stuff is constructed, right? Because that's where none of the people, well, I can't speak for everybody, but certainly I'm not a security person. And so, we kind of know things at the 10,000 foot level and stuff, but we need people that can actually tell us, yeah, that's the right way to do stuff, and provide that kind of, protocol guidance.
Okay, all right. There's a lot of expertise in the IPsec. The IPsec working group is small, but there's a lot of expertise there. So I'm sure I could corral 1 or 2 people to help.
Okay, and how will they react if we go there and say, okay, guys, we need your help, but we don't want to use IPsec?
What would you be using then if you're not going to be defining something?
So the problem here is that the first hop between the client and the relay, it's multicast in one direction. So
and the client only has a link local address, and so it needs help getting things off the link.
So can you use IPsec in this case?
I don't know.
So I think what we
I
want
didn't
to.
say I was the IPsec expert.
We don't want to replace the relay, we don't want to replace the relay agents. And so we need a protocol that really works at the DHCP layer, because the relay will forward DHCP packets for us. And there's a mechanism to do that. And so we really need something that works at the DHCP layer, because we can't do it at the IP layer unless we do hop by hop. And the problem with hop by hop is that, that could be an option, but now we have to put that logic in the relays, which is something that we don't really want to do.
Right. So the IPsec will work fine. It's the key exchange. It's the key exchange is the whole problem here. In Ike v2, the multicast thing is going to be, they tried to do this in routing protocols and did not have a whole lot of success with CARP. I think we should go talk to them, though. I think it's a conversation we can have, saying this is our use case for our first hop. You're going to have to talk about the IPsec will work fine. You can put any rule you want in there. Like you could manually configure this, right? Obviously, we don't want to manually configure it. That's the problem.
But how would it work for the relays? Because the relays aren't going to be able to pick up the packet.
They'd have to exchange. I'd have to think about this. Tim's better at this, and I mean, this is why Tim's suggesting. He's worked with the IPsec working group for some time. He obviously does all the V6 IPsec testing that we do at the lab. He'd be better at that kind of stuff. If you want to talk details, he's the guy you want to talk to.
Right,
He can walk you through all of that, which it's beyond me. He's not here this week, unfortunately.
Well, he's on the.
He's listening.
So, unfortunately, we already had this kind of discussion. For instance, I asked her some help about the pure crypto part to see if there is something usable. We have a lot of hard things to adapt DHCP to do security. So you can go to one exchange with multicast, it's a nightmare. Of course, you have no address, so you can't use any standard security protocol. So we already go on this, so it's why I suggested so 1 or 2 weeks ago to go back to problem statement, so to see what we want first before just going around and see if there is a lot of hearts problem, different hearts problem with no easy solution. So I believe we should not jump to opportunity encryption first, or define exactly what we want. For instance, if you want mutual authentication, things like that, it's pretty hard to do.
I'm not suggesting I'm suggesting that.
Yeah. No, even if you have no authentication, just a key exchange, it's hard to do with only one packet each side. Yes, so you can have a query response. Yes, only one query and response, one exchange. One exchange.
Okay, and should I just want to make sure everyone understands the opportunistic security just means no authentication.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Suresh Krishnan. So there's one thing I want to say here. So drop the work is okay with me, given that, okay, so if you decide to go that way, like 3315 BIS has to probably do something more. So you cannot use a crutch doesn't exist, right? Like so, and so I'm fine with working on the problem statement. Like do opportunistic encryption is okay. First one, not okay. Like it does not really make sense because if it's not usable, why would we bother, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm fine with all the other three things. And if 3315 BIS comes out quickly, or I can actually do this now and like take it to Kathleen and like Ecker and get a SecDir review done for that, right? Like, so make sure they look at it and say, okay, like what about this? And that could give us information about what goes into the problem statement after, right? Because if they say like, oh, you need to encrypt this because this is like personally identifiable MAC address in there. And then we say, okay, cool, right? Like that could be something we look at, but I don't think we've done the security side of this. And I think we should, so like I explicitly called for a SecDir review for this like a couple of meetings ago, right? Because this was obviously a security thing, but I'm talking about doing the security review for 3315 BIS, which is like a huge document, but I think it'll take some effort. But if like, you know, Kathleen can come back with like, you know, review of it saying like, hey guys, like you need encryption here, or if they don't, then we have a different path to go forward because we have the authentication option. And then we say, okay, we have authentication on this and we're all set, right? So I think that would be my preferred way forward. Kathleen?
So just to tap onto that, when you send that request over, it sounds like you're not just looking for a security review, but for a threat analysis.
So it's,
Who does that, but-
okay.
and
No,
then we have-
but there is a
Yeah.
security consideration section, but just to make sure if that's okay.
Yeah, so for the threat analysis aspect, I think we'll have to, depending on who's doing the work, we might have to pair up people because there are things that you guys know that may not be known. So
So like.
threat analysis is
Like
it's a
that?
whole, yeah, whereas the security review, you're getting the knowledge of the reviewer. And if they're not deep in this space, you're going to get a very different review than somebody who's deep in this space. And then even two people who are deep in this space, you could get very different reviews.
Okay, so so if I paraphrase you, like maybe I'm misstating, but like you want us to do a little bit more homework before we come to you? Is that a fair statement?
Okay, so there's also LFC 78, I think 19. That's privacy analysis. It covers some of the attacks.
Right.
It's not a full scope, but at the time we were focusing on attacks that can impact privacy.
Okay, sounds good. So we hatched out on the list, but so let's try to put some more effort into like the security considerations, see what the threats are, and then throw it out to the SecDir to see if like that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Bernie, you don't look convinced.
No, I'm just trying to figure out, are we gonna ask about these four, or are we just gonna proceed with saying, let's see what 3315 analysis shows?
And the latter.
Okay.
Is that okay?
So a different, rather than dropping the work, we would be suspending the work on this pending the outcome of what the IESG finally decides about whether what we have in 3315 biz is acceptable or not.
Like the SecDir review can happen before the ESG, right? So like just waiting for an initial SecDir review and then we decide.
Okay, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just the process of going through this review, the security reviews and stuff like that. Okay, which we should be able to do fairly soon. So it may not really delay things that much. And if somebody really has an interest on one of these that, isn't dropped the work, they can start the work.
Yeah, so.
Okay,
Okay, so seems like we have a plan.
so I think we're sort of deferring the action until we understand.
But still, we have some work to do. We need to review the security considerations in bees.
And it really comes down to probably a little bit of the third one, which is that we're really trying to figure out, is there really a problem that we need to solve, right?
Mm.
And if what we have today is acceptable, then there's no problem we need to solve.
Security and privacy considerations. Now we have both.
Well, we actually have both in
Useful in this
3315
case.
case. So, okay. All right. So I think
Okay.
unless, that's does anybody have any feelings about that's a bad direction? Does anybody want to? So I just to summarize, I think what we're going to do now is wait to see what happens with the security privacy analysis of 3315 biz to see if there is a problem that we still need to solve. And based on that result, we'll have to figure out what we do with the work. Anybody? And then, we'll confirm that on the list, see, but otherwise, okay, good.
Good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Kathleen. All right, so next, we have a remote. I didn't even have to hit the red button, or do I still have to hit the red button? Can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Hello.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. So you can begin. I'll probably have to run the slides for you, so let me know when to advance.
Okay, sure. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Srinivas Nalluri. I work for Ericsson in Bangalore. So I couldn't make that personally because of some logistic issues. I hope this remote presentation will go good without much buffering and other problems. Okay, can we start with the next slide already? Okay, so this presentation is about one of the drafts that I submitted individually, and the context here is Internet of Things. We are using a protocol called lightweight mission-to-mission protocol, which is very popular in IoT and mission-to-mission communication scenarios. This is used to manage the devices and to collect the data from the devices for such use cases. And as you all know, DHCP-v6 is still popular in IoT networks to get the prefixes and IP addresses, of course. So we realized that there is need to support some options to enable IoT services on IoT end devices. These options are required in DHCP-v6. Of course, we thought of proposing same for v4 also to make it in line. That's it. So can we move on, please? Okay, before we proceed with the proposed draft, just to set the context, I want to use this slide to talk about LWMPM protocol. So lightweight mission-to-mission protocol is a specification defined in Open Mobile Alliance forum. As I said, it's for IoT device management and data collection. It's a client-server protocol, just like any other client-server protocol, it works. And this runs on constrained application protocol, which is IETF RFC 7252. So this constrained application protocol provides a RESTful interface, just like HTTP, except that it runs on UDP to make it lightweight. So if you see this diagram, lightweight mission-to-mission client manages some data objects. Obviously, those data objects are nothing but the data that we want to exchange in IoT scenarios. For example, maybe the location of the device or the temperature, humidity. These data objects are defined in IP Smart Objects group. And you can see two different servers here. One is Bootstrap server, and the other one is actual lightweight mission-to-mission protocol management server. So the Bootstrap server is the one which is used to bootstrap the client device. And during the bootstrap, it provides the information that is required to get connected with the actual management server. So during bootstrap, it provides information like what are the management server, maybe the URI required to connect, and also some security credentials or certificates, such things also. But the whole problem which we are talking here is the Bootstrap server information itself is hard-coded or it's manually configured today on LWMPM client devices. So that's not a good practice, because the server might change in between. If we want to re-bootstrap, it's possible that the server is no more available. So there should be a way to get it dynamically. So can we proceed to next slide? Okay. In summary, what we are proposing is, as I said, the bootstrapping server information is hard-coded or manually configured today at the client devices. So we see need for few options required, 4 of them. Indeed, 2 of them, they are repeated for v4 and v6 here. One is the URI itself, which is required to get connected with the Bootstrap server. We can use the DHCP-v6 option to serve this one. And the second one is the certificate that is required to connect with the Bootstrap server. The same, these 2 options, I thought it's good to propose for v4 also, though v4 is not so popular in IoT networks today. Just to make sure that the options are available for v4, I thought it's better to propose. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Okay, now we are already starting with the options that we are proposing. The first one is the Bootstrap server URI. I mean, it's the option structure and all. Of course, I need not talk about it. It's straightforward. This URI is I mean, the standard format, it's a string that we use. It's not null terminated string. So how to encode this URI, it's already mentioned in our options related RFCs available, which is provided in the draft as a reference. So can we move on to the next one? So the next one is the LWM server certificate that's required to get connectivity. So here there are few issues or few concerns raised already, which I'm trying to address. One is about validating the certificate itself. How do we validate? And there are few comments received on reference provided about RFC 7296 section 3.6 and what type of certificates can be encoded. That's another comment. I'll have to work on them, of course. They are received only today, I think. So this certificate is used to get connected with the LWM Bootstrap server. And one important point here is, in LWM case, it's possible that the Bootstrap server and management server might be same. In such cases, the same options which we are talking here can be used for management server also, which is not explicitly mentioned in the draft. So, yeah.
Francis Dupont, oops.
Sorry.
It's work?
I think it works, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can hear.
No, so, but I tried this one. Yes. So, Francis Dupont, so I sent an email on the list because I believe the last statement about the IGV2 cert payload, which is section 3.6, is underspecified, and I propose some improvements. So you can just read the list and discuss with me if you have more details or you need something else.
Yeah, sure. I saw this comment just a few minutes ago, maybe 15 minutes ago. I was trying to understand that. I will get in touch with you through the email to understand it better, and I'll work on it.
So, to summary, I believe it's a good idea. Just do exactly the same thing, but it's underspecified. You have an opportunity to do something which I believe will be better in your context.
Right. Thank you. Okay, I will refer. It's more about the encoding formats. I think the comment. I will refer this RFC and I'll update this. And the next one is, of course, again, the Bootstrap URI for V4. The option structure, again, I'm not talking about it. It's standard one. So maybe we can already move to next one. There's nothing much to talk about it. And here, again, the certificate that we want to use for V4 clients. There are some concerns expressed about this also, about the size of the certificate itself might be very big and we can't accommodate it in 255 byte supported here in option. As this was already a comment I received from Bernie, if I'm not wrong. And they also suggested to use some other reference where one of the RFC talks about how to encode bigger options in basic V4 options. So I mentioned that already in the draft. And this is also one more comment I received today from Francis, if I'm not wrong. So that's it. I think that there's nothing much to talk about options. They're straightforward, except the use case, which I feel is important here. So the next steps which I want to discuss are, there are few comments which I already addressed, which I received earlier through our working group mails. There are new comments which I received today. I'll work on them, of course. And one more important thing is, I'm sure there might be few other people working on these IoT use cases and scenarios. I would like to know if there are more use cases where some other options would be required, so that we can co-author one draft or one document so that it covers all IoT related scenarios, or at least known IoT related scenarios, if not all. So that's something I want to understand from anybody in the group. And of course, the next step is if this makes sense, I would like to hear from all of you to know if it can be adapted as DHC working group document.
Okay, this is Bernie Volz. A few questions.
Yep.
You mentioned that most IoT stuff is using V6, and I know you could define V4 options, but if nobody's going to use them, it may be better not to do them because the V4 option space is a little tighter. I mean, maybe V4 is dead and we don't have to worry about it, but it's just a question. I mean, it may be better if you don't need them to just remove them because it just preserves that resource. Not that
I understand that point, but I wanted to propose this because when we see the devices that are coming into probably as prototypes and market, we see one statement in the supported feature list. They say, as of now, IPv4, IPv6 will be supported later. This is the kind of statements we keep listening. So maybe for such devices which are still not completely ready, maybe we can still use V4. That's the reason why I wanted to keep it. Of course, as you said, in future, if nobody is going to use V4 at all in any scenario, then yes, I think we can skip it. And also one more point is maybe in industrial automation kind of cases where lightweight machine-to-machine protocol is running, I'm not sure whether they'll completely go for V4 or they will still use their own intranet with, they'll go for V6 or not, or they might use their own intranet with V4 itself. So
okay, it's just a comment that I think if you don't need it, don't ask for it. But if you think you do, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think these also follow the RFC 7227 guidelines. So there's not really much we comment on.
Sure.
The question about doing an adoption call really goes to Suresh, and the question about is there there probably is no other working group that would cover this technology, and therefore it really does fall back to us. And as long as Suresh is in favor of us doing the adoption call, I think that we can easily proceed with that.
Yeah, Suresh Krishnan. So there's no other working group that can take this. So this is done in an external SGO, right, Srinivas? So
Yes, Suresh, I discussed this with a few other people, especially the core and such groups who are doing things towards IoT. But I don't find any suitable working group. That's because LWMTM itself is not from IETF; it's from some other forum.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's an external SDO, right? So I don't mind, but as long as make sure there's somebody to review this here, and I'll try to find review outside. But my only concern would be whether this will get enough review here. So we can look at the option formats, but the content itself, I'm not sure how we can get review here. So maybe we had to figure out how to do that, but I don't mind if you adopt this and we'll figure out how to do that if there is interest to do it here.
Okay, sure. Probably I can find some people who are working in T2T working group. That's another thing probably which is the closest thing I can think of. If there are few people or contacts we can get here.
It's a research group, yeah. We can find them there, but we want them to come here and do the reviews, right? So that's something we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay,
Because
sure.
if there's nobody reviews here, it's not going to pass working group last call.
Right.
Right, yes. Okay, fine. Thank you. So
Any other comments? All right. Well, did you? Okay, no. I thought Francis was getting up. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And now we have Dan Moses to present on the on-demand extensions. Where'd the little... There you go. Okay.
Okay.
Now it's a different one.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Thank you for letting me present stuff here. I'm not part of DHC.
Speak up a little bit. 'cause I
Oh, I'm
think-
sorry. So this is work that is being done in DMM group, and I'll give you a very short and high-level description of what we're doing and why we need help from DHCP, or why are we proposing to define some new option or options. And actually what we need from the DHC group is more a review of making sure that we are not violating any DHCP formats or message passing or things like that. Okay, regarding the DMM stuff, we are reviewing that in DMM. Okay, so a very quick description of what's happening in DMM. And we are talking about mobile networks. So in mobile networks, one of the problems that we have is to maintain IP session continuity while a node travels around the network. So when a node moves from one point of connection to another, it might move to a different LAN, and as a result will need a different IP prefix. And as a result, its original source IP address will go away. And that might be problematic for existing applications that are in the middle of exchanging traffic. So the way mobile networks resolved this problem a long time ago is via tunneling. So if I'll give an example from proxy mobile IP, we have an LMA and MAGs. The mobile network connects to the network through MAGs, and the LMA is some mobility anchor which exposes traffic to the rest of the network. And we create a tunnel between the LMA and the MAG to make sure that traffic which is destined to the mobile network over there will get there even though its source IP address has really this prefix, so that the traffic can go to the corresponding node over here. And when the mobile node moves from one place to another, it's the responsibility of the network to update the tunnel to the new MAG, and as a result, IP continuity is preserved. So this is what exists today, and it works fine, and everybody is happy, but this could be optimized. And the problem is that we have many mobile nodes and many corresponding nodes, and you can start see all the traffic has to go through that LMA. And if we continue and even have much more, we are getting into a problem. This is a single point of failure. It's a bottleneck. There are all kinds of issues around that. And in DMM, we are trying to resolve this problem. And we are trying to resolve this problem in different ways. All are good. Sorry. So one way, of course, is to distribute the LMA and have several LMAs. And by that, we can direct part of the mobile nodes to one LMA, others to another LMA, and so on and so forth. So we are resolving the single point of failure and the bottlenecks and stuff like that. So this is one solution that we are trying to define. And there's another solution, or another way of looking at things. So if you think about it, before I try to explain why IP continuity is important, but really some applications don't really need IP continuity. They could manage very well a modification of their source IP address. They will reopen a socket with a new IP address. The user experience won't be really affected, and everything works well. So if we manage to present to the network when we need IP address continuity and when we don't need IP address continuity, we offload some of the activity from those mobility anchors that I showed before. And for that, one of the things that we need is a support in DHCP. So, okay, I don't want to get into too much details about that, but this slide shows different types of IP addresses, or actually services, that an application can request from the network. Maybe I'll just describe two. One is session lasting IP address. Such an IP address is guaranteed by the network to be valid as long as the session is still running. This is excellent service from the network, and of course it requires the tunneling and it's costly. And the other one I want to describe here is non-persistent. Non-persistent means no guarantee. You are getting an IP address, it might go away, you will have to deal with that. And I showed that there are applications that can deal with that. Of course, for session lasting, we need a mobility anchor or an LMA. And for non-persistent, we don't need one. Okay, so actually, in the draft that I referenced in the mailing list, we introduced two new options. We tried to limit the changes that we are requesting from DHCP. We are not experts in DHCP, and we don't think we need too much activity in DHCP. And okay, so one option is to be able to, when we request a prefix through prefix delegation, we want to be able to communicate to the network what kind of service we want. And in the reply, we want to see from the network if we received that service or not. And there is also another need, which I'll talk in a minute. So the IP continuity service option is the new option that we were requesting. This is the option in which the mobile host indicates to the network what type of service it requires, and for the network to provide the information about what has been provisioned. The other option has a star on it because I'm not absolutely sure we need it, and I would like to consult with you. I will describe it later on. As I said before, there is no impact on DHCP message flow. We're not changing anything. We are not changing any format. We are just adding new options. So an example for the IP continuity service option, it should be encapsulated in the prefix options area of the prefix delegation option. And this is where it has to be. I'm trying to show here a schematic of where it is, and it's similar to the status code option, which also appears in that options area. So this is where we see this new option coming in. It's a very simple option. The length is 1. It has an option code, and the service type is coded, and we actually need 2 bits, or I'm sorry, 3 bits to code the different service types. So this is this option. Some usage rules, and I'll talk also about backwards compatibility. So usage rules, the client is always the first to request this option. The server will reply using this option only when it initially received the request for this option. And once the server replied with this option, any subsequent messages which are related to this prefix should use this option and should not change the values. So it's not like I requested a session lasting IP prefix, I got one, and then at some point I'm trying to renew the lease, but with a different type. This is not allowed. Backwards compatibility. We assume that there will be servers that won't support these new options, so we're trying to define rules for backwards compatibility. Yes.
About this, I check on the 3315 bis, the famous bis document, and say unknown option should be ignored.
Should be ignored.
Ignored.
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
Good.
So it should work with a problem with a compliant server.
Oh, good. So this is what we assume. And what we are saying here is, okay, let's assume a client requests a prefix with this option. And since the server will ignore it, it won't get a reply.
No, it will get a reply.
It will get a reply.
It will get a reply as if it was just a normal IA prefix option, without that option.
Oh,
Just the
Oh,
the
so I didn't
option will be
understand.
ignored.
oh, so that's bad. So we need
But
to
no,
find
it's
a-
not a bad, because the reply will not include
Ah,
the
okay.
community service option. So
I
you'll
see.
know.
I see. Okay. So
Okay.
I'll fix the text in the draft to say what happens in that case. And so the right message flow is the client will request a prefix with this option, will receive a reply without this option, and will deduct that the server doesn't support that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That's a good. Thank you. Okay. So I'll fix that. And of course, a server cannot reply with a prefix with that option if the client didn't initially request that option. Okay, again, for backwards compatibility. Yes.
I didn't read the draft, but I believe you added at least one new error when it has some prefix, but not for this kind of service.
Right. So actually we defined an error for that. We had a typo in the error. I got an email from the list about that, and I'll fix that. The error said address not available, something like that, and the comment was you should write prefix not available. So I'll fix that.
So I see you have a comment here about the client recording the information that the server doesn't support the option. It's strictly not necessary. The client could continue sending this option in following messages if it still makes sense from the client perspective, because the capability could be enabled later at the time, and the client then would pick it. Because otherwise, when you visit a new network and it detects that, okay, this capability is not enabled, and then it gets enabled later, the client would never be able to detect this.
So
in subsequent,
okay.
in subsequent renewal operations.
I understand. I'm trying to think. I think that in the text in the draft, I have to visit that. I wrote that subsequent messages should not have that option, but every once in a while it can introduce the option again.
It's probably easier just to say it always.
Exactly, especially as you're saying the option will be ignored. I wasn't aware that the server will ignore it, but will reply. But since it does, maybe this makes more sense. So I will fix that. Okay. Oh, I didn't talk about I want to talk back about the anchor preference option. Okay, what is an anchor preference option and why I'm not sure we need it? If we go back to this slide, we can see that we have several anchors. In this slide, we have 3 anchors. And there is an issue of how does the network allocate a specific anchor to a node.
The anchor, let me just ask you, the anchors here are the LMAs?
Yes, LMAs, yes. Now, we didn't get into too much work regarding how to allocate anchors, not yet at least in DMM, but I was requested by one of the delegates to enable a future algorithm where the node knows what's best for him and will ask for a specific anchor. Now, the node is not aware of anchors, but the node has history about prefixes it received in the past. And if it comes and says, give me this prefix, it actually means I want this route, this LMA or this anchor, because the different anchors provide different prefixes. So we thought to add this option where a node requests or hints, hey, it'll be nice if I get this prefix, meaning this is the LMA I want, or the anchor I want. It doesn't necessarily have to receive this specific prefix, but it wants to receive a prefix from that LMA. Okay. Now, when I read, and by the way, the network, and it's written there, the network doesn't have to provide that prefix. It's just a hint. Now, when I read the prefix delegation draft or RFC again, I saw that this already exists. So I said, hey, maybe we don't need it, but the interpretation is a little different, and I wanted to make sure that it's okay, or whether I need another option. The interpretation that I understood from the RFC is when a node requests a certain prefix, it wants that certain prefix. And what we're saying here is when we hint on that prefix, we will be satisfied with any prefix associated with the same LMA.
I think that, you know, that the nodes really don't care. It's the server's policy that comes into play there. And so it's much more a server thing that you have, because what, you know, the prefix that comes back is the prefix it's going to use.
Right.
And if it isn't, if it's on a different LMA or it's on the same LMA, it may not know, right?
Right,
All
it won't know,
says is-
it won't know, right.
And so it's really, that really comes down to a server policy issue. So that's something that is really something that the implementers of the service that want
Right.
to support the LMA stuff would be more concerned about.
Right,
Whereas the client would probably not, you know, doesn't know. So
Right,
I
exactly.
think you don't need a new option to you just request the client. You just have the client request that prefix. And then if the server gives it that prefix or gives it some other prefix, it's really up to the server to determine what meaning that has, right?
So this was my thinking. I wasn't sure. This is why I didn't remove that before coming here. So what I'm understanding from this conversation is I can remove that option, and I'll be left with only one option, very simple option, and that's a good thing.
Well,
for us.
and you may need, I think what you will need to do in your document is to put a note that, you know, it is a matter of server policy in this particular environment, how that requested prefix is used, you know,
Okay.
because the normal policy for a server would be, hey, can I give that prefix to that client? Yes or no? Okay. And if it can, it usually does. But you want it, if it can't give it, then you want it to assign a, you know, not just pick an arbitrary prefix, but pick one on that LMA.
And if not, pick on a different
Pick-
LMA,
right.
but yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay.
But it's more of a server policy thing
Okay.
that you will probably need to document.
Yes.
I recommend you read the famous BIS document, which is, and if it's not clear enough, just say it in the list.
So you're talking about 3315 BIS.
Right.
Yes.
No, so I must admit, I didn't read that. I read 3315
And
and
36.
3633.
Yes, you
So
should read the BIS,
okay.
which is better
Okay.
and up to date.
Okay, so I'll do that. And I think I got quite a few comments on the list in here, which is very helpful. So I will produce, and I'll read 3315 BIS, and then I'll issue a new version of the draft. And I'm getting to next steps. So I will probably be happy to receive another review on that new draft, just to make sure that I captured the comments correctly and that I didn't break anything. And if I get a V from DHC, I can go back to DMM and say, DHC approved that, we can continue our work.
Yes, and I think if, you know, because options will eventually require both standards action and expert review, you know, and some of the people that are reviewing it are active in the DC working group, we'll get a review at that point. But I think it's still better that whenever you make a change, or like when you go for a working group last call
Come back
in the
here.
DMM, let us know about it, because that's another review point. So if you make any substantive changes, you know, I mean, if you're just republishing to keep it alive or something, or make an editorial change, no big deal. But if there's a substantial change, notify us about the change, And also, if you go to working group last call, include us in the working group last call cycle, just so that we're aware of it.
That's a good plan. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, Sir Krishnan, so I will do it. I'm the AD for both, so I'll do it.
Well, it's nice if they can do it, right? It's one less thing you have to worry about.
No, but I had to watch out, right? Like people try to slip things by me all the time, so.
Okay, well, anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss before we close the working group meeting?
Okay, that's it.
All right, well, thank you, and
See you in Singapore.
Yep.
And if you haven't signed yet the blue sheets, please, they are important.
and thank you for attending.